PS4 video. So today, we're gonna be taking a look at the latest iteration of the all-in-one jailbreak kit for the PS4. The latest design, which is the P4 tool, which is now available on AliExpress. There's lots of sellers available for it, so you can pick up this latest version. We did cover the original version a little while ago, which was this device here, which is basically just a Lugfox Pico that is pre-programmed with the exploit. In this case, that you just connect up to your PS4. It's got an Ethernet on one side and USB-C to power it. So this is the old device. So let's go ahead and unbox the new device to see what has changed with this new iteration. So we're gonna go ahead and unbox it right here. So it should be more or less the same in terms of what's included. So you can see here we've got our USB-C cable to power the device. We'll just go ahead and unbox that. So we've got USB Type-A to USB Type-C. So we can connect this up to the PS4 to power it. So we've got that. We also have the device itself, so we'll go ahead and open this up. So we've got the actual device itself here much smaller. And then we've got a USB as well for, of course, the payload. So the gold hand payload will be preloaded on this USB stick. And all we have to do here is plug that into the PS4 to load it for the first time. Once gold 10's been loaded for the first time, the USB drive will no longer be required because the loader will actually copy the gold 10 payload from the USB to the hard drive. So it can then be loaded from the hard drive. So that USB drive is only required for the first time. But here's the actual device itself right here. And of course, there's also a little instruction booklet that comes with this, which we actually get colored screenshots this time, which gives you a general guide on how to set up the network. So we've got the first steps here. So it goes through here, showing you how to set up the network for PO when the device is connected, and then how to know once everything is loaded. When gold hand's loaded, and you have the gold hand option in the function menu. So it goes through all of that step by step. So this is all you get your USB cable to power it, the device itself, and the USB drive for loading the golden payload for the first time. Of course, the big advantage of this design is you actually have the Ethernet connector built into the device itself. So the device is more of a dongle that plugs directly into the back of your console. So it's gonna be much less noticeable than this, which hangs off the back of your console with a small Ethernet cable. So the Ethernet cable is completely removed, and the device is much smaller and just plugs into the back of your PS4. It's gonna be a lot less noticeable. So the only thing that is still a little bit messy is the USB cable. Now, if you have a PS4 Pro, this is actually probably not going to be too bad, because a PS4 Pro actually has a USB port at the back. So you can essentially just plug this into the back of the PS4. So the UID can be powered by the USB port on the back. And that way the cable is hidden behind the console. And it's gonna be relatively, discreet, it's gonna be relatively hidden. However, if you're using a standard PS4, like a base PS4 or PS4 Slim, where you only have USB ports at the front, that's why this cable needs to be long enough so that it can reach from the back of the console, where the Ethernet port is, to a front USB port to power it. And that is, of course, unfortunately gonna be a little bit more noticeable if you have a base PS4 or a PS4 Slim, because you're gonna have to have this plugged into the front of the console, whereas the device is plugged into the back. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this set up and see how this works. I noticed there's also a little button here at the side. It's probably the button that's required to program the device, like the boot button, where you basically hold down the button when plugging it into the computer, and that will put it into its program mode, which will allow you to flash it if you want to update the firmware that's on it in the future. With like another version of the exploit that runs faster in future, you have the option to update it. Okay, so as we hook this up to the PS4, there's actually two versions of this. There is the version that has the right-angled connector on it, which is the one I have here. And then there's also a new version that does not have a right-angle connector. And the reason for that is that the right-angle connector perfectly fits on a base PS4. There's no clearance issues, it fits there nicely. You can see that. You know it's pretty hidden once it is connected to the console. And of course you do, however, have to plug in that USB-C cable between the device and the front USB port on a base PS4. Because there's no USB ports at the back. So that is going to make it more noticeable. You'll have that USB cable trailing from the back to the front. So that is one of the issues there. But the actual device itself fits nicely without any issues. The problem comes when you have the right-angled connector on a PS4 Slim or a PS4 Pro. Because when we plug it into, say, a PS4 Pro, for instance, you can see that there is a clearance issue. So that if you try to have the console lying flat on like a table, then it's not going to be able to fit, with this connector drooping down below it. So you would have to actually hang the console off the edge of your desk in order to create some clearance so that you can have it lying flat. Otherwise, you would have to have the console vertical to use the version that has the right-angled connector. So if you have a PS4 Pro or you're gonna want to grab Slim, the other version that does not have the right-angled connector so that it will be able to be plugged in while it is lying flat on a PS4 Pro or Slim. So that's one issue you need to be aware of. But with the PS4 Pro, of course, we have a USB port, so we can just connect our USB-C cable to the device and then the other end into the back of the PS4. So from the front, you're not really gonna notice that there's any device connected to the console. When you fire this up, there is a little red LED that blinks on the side of the device to show activity when it's running the exploit. And when it's powered on all, though, you're probably not really gonna notice that when most it's plugged of the time. Into the back. And of course, you also need to plug in the USB if you are running this for the first time and you don't have the Gold 10 payload already on the hard drive. Console, you'll have to plug in that USB which drive, does have a little red activity LED on it as well. So now that we have everything hooked up, we can set things up for the software by following the instructions, which tell us to go into the network settings and set up the internet connection using a LAN cable, selecting custom and selecting PPPoE as the network protocol, entering a random PPPoE username and password. And then from there, you can click next and then do automatic and do not use proxy. And that's everything that needs to be set up. It does recommend testing your internet connection, but you don't really have to do that. Once you have the post settings set up, you can just go into your system information and check to see if you have the IP address 40 to 42. If you see that popping up, that means it is running the exploit. And then you just wait for it to successfully jailbreak. Now, this is just using the regular Luckfox Pico project from GitHub, the same one that I covered on how to set up your own Luckfox Pico. To run the jailbreak, it's the same exact project. So you know the timings and everything are gonna be very similar. So you're just gonna have to wait. It only takes a few seconds for each attempt. And then, of course, if it fails an attempt, your IP address will go back to 0. And then it will go back to 42 again, until it eventually jailbreaks successfully. So you keep seeing the you know, network connection. Disconnected message will pop up every time it fails, and then eventually it will succeed. So I think this took about 3 attempts there to actually get the exploit up and running. But as you can see, once it runs, you'll get the gold hand message showing that it's running. And it will also tell you that it has copied the golden payload from the USB to the hard drive. So when you see that notification, that means the next time that you want to run the exploit, you will no longer need that USB drive plugged into the console anymore on subsequent attempts. And so there we go, we've got the exploit. You can see we have Gold Hen enabled. We've got the Gold 10 settings in the function menu, and we have the jailbreak all up and running. So that is how the device is designed to function. It's using the same Luckfox Pico project that you would program onto your own Luckfox if you were doing this manually. So this is just a regular Luckfox Pico device. And the benefit of that is that it does also give you the option to update it if you want. Obviously, it's designed to be a plug-and-play device, so you shouldn't really have to do any software setup. It should just be plug it in and set up your network settings, and you'll get the jailbreak. If you do want to be able to update it does give you the option to do that. So you know, if there's a faster firmware that comes out for the device that can load the exploit quicker, or improvements to the exploit itself that can make it load faster or more reliably, then you'll be able to program the device and get that latest update on there. So on the actual website pfr-tool.com, you can head there, you can go to the download section. You'll find all of the software required there to actually in order to actually get the device into its program mode so that you can program it. All you have to do is hold down the little button that is next to the USB-C port on the device. You hold down that button as you're plugging in the USB-C cable to your computer. It will then boot the device into its program mode. If you go on the SOS Toolkit software for programming it, it should then pop up in the USB devices as master mask ROM or mask ROM 110 or something to that effect. And that means it is in its program
And you can
mode.
then
Update the software on it. So in order to actually update the device, I have got a full tutorial showing you exactly how to set up the Luckfox Pico from start to finish. It's my tutorial on how to set up the Luckfox Pico without an SD card. You can follow the tutorial to the letter to update this device, because it is again exactly the same. In fact, the actual video tutorial on the P4 website is literally just ripping off my own video. It's literally my video, and they've gone ahead and covered up the Modern Warfare watermark in the bottom right-hand corner. Which is pretty funny. So the reason why I know that you can absolutely follow that video to update this device is because they're literally using that video in their own guide, or my guide to show people how to update this. So yeah, you can follow that video. I'll leave it linked down in the description if you want to update the device. Now, one downside that this thing does have, though, that I definitely give it a little bit of criticism is the fact that it does not allow you to easily switch firmwares. So it comes pre-programmed for 11.0. So if you are on firmware 11.0, I would sure recommend the device. If you are looking for a plug-and-play solution, it's a good option. However, if you're on any other firmware, despite the fact that it says it supports 9.0 up to 11.0, which includes, like 9.60 and 10.0 and 1.0, the truth is, you are not gonna be able to get it to work with those firmwares unless you actually rerun the install script on the device, which means connecting it to the computer, giving it a static IP address, connecting to it via SSH with Mobile, Xterm or PuTTY, and then running the install script from the GitHub project, and then selecting the correct firmware that you want to switch it to in order for it to work on that firmware, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being a plug-and-play device. If you have to go through all of that software setup in order to get it to the firmware that you're on, so it will work with that firmware version. So that is one downside I will give this. I mean, if you're on 11.0, you don't have to worry about that, because it comes pre-programmed for 11.0. So it is just plug and play if you're on 11.0. But if you're on any of the other supposedly supported firmwares that it says it does support, then you have to go through quite a bit of software set up in order to get it to work. And you'll probably think the device is broken if you just assume that it's going to work on, say, 9.0 or 10.0, and you plug it in, and it's just crashing the console every single time, because you have to manually go in there and switch the firmware via SSH, which is certainly not very convenient for a plug-and-play device. Because some of the other devices, like the original device that I reviewed, now has a V2 or V3 version of that device. Has a little switch on the back. To switch between like 9.0 and 11.0, you can just click a switch on the back to set it to the firmware. Whereas this P4 device, you literally have to go in there with software and kind of program it, which is obviously not very convenient. So that's one downside. But if you are on 11.0 and you're looking for a plug-and-play solution where you don't have to do any software, then I would recommend this since device. It is pre-programmed for 11.0. So there's no software setup required if you are on that firmware. Just make sure you get the correct version. In terms of the angled connector, if you're on a base PS4, the angled connector is fine. But if you're on a PS4 Slim or you're gonna want the version that doesn't have the angled connector, so that you'll be able to lie the console and you don't flat. Have to have it vertical in order to have this plugged in. And it is nice again that it has the option to update the firmware if needed, and all the information is provided there on their website. So anyway, that is pretty much it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed.